G'day and welcome to ReDriven. Now, let's talk perfect recipes, like my mum's Christmas pudding. That is a perfect recipe. Margot Robbie or Ryan Gosling wearing minimal clothing, another perfect recipe. A powerful turbocharged 6-cylinder engine powering the rear wheels in a small coupe body, a perfect recipe. But even though the BMW 135i makes for a perfect recipe, are these still any good after many years and thousands of kilometres, or have they just gone past their use by date? What goes wrong with them? What do they cost to own and maintain? What do they like to live with on a daily basis? And most importantly, should you buy one? Let's find out. Now, before we get deep into the BMW 1 Series, I've got to give a massive shout out to all of the BMW owners groups, mechanics, technicians, and in particular, BMW 1 Series expert Neil Palmer for helping us out with this video. With all of their information, hopefully it makes for this video being a good video. Now, in this video, we will be focusing on the Australian variant of the BMW 1 Series, the first generation 1 Series, and in particular, the E87 135i. But if you're not from Australia, don't freak out or panic, because everything we're going to be going over should relate to first gen 1 Series and 135is in particular in your local market. Now, the first generation 1 Series was available in 4 different body styles, 3 and 5-door hatchbacks, a convertible, and this, the coupe, with a host of various petrol and diesel engines from a 1.6 litre naturally aspirated inline 4 all the way through to a 3 litre twin turbo 6 with manual or automatic transmissions and across no less than 13 variant and trim levels split over a couple of sub-generations. What we mean by these sub-generations is that the 1 Series received a midlife update, or as BMW call it, an LCI update, both in 2007 for the hatchback and 2011 for the convertible and coupe. Now, for many cars, this midlife update is purely cosmetic, but for the 1 Series, depending on trim and spec, a host of mechanical and equipment changes also occurred, including complete engine changes. Like all classic BMWs, the 1 Series has the engine positioned up the front and it sends its power through the rear wheels. And while that should result in favourable driving dynamics, for some lower spec 1 Series, sometimes it doesn't, but we'll get to that later. And look, we'd love to go over every graphic detail of every series and evolution and submodel and variant and all that sort of stuff, but look, that would just take way too long. But the thing is, we have gathered all that information and we've put it in our handy ReDriven cheat sheets. Our cheat sheets are invaluable as they provide a full breakdown of the car's model range, its common problems, what you need to look out for before handing over your hard-earned cash, how much of that cash you should be handing over, and so much more. Check it out at redriven.com or in the link below. Now, if you're watching this and you're already a 1 Series or a 135 expert, or you own one of these cars and you've noticed in the video that we've missed something, please let us know in the comments below. Obviously, we're doing our best to cover everything we can, but we generally find it's the owners of these cars that are the true experts. So yeah, if we've missed something, let us know in the comments. So, does it look good? Well, nearly. Now, what I mean by that, I'm just going to use an analogy here. If Liam Hemsworth was the only Hemsworth, he'd be the best looking Hemsworth, but the problem is, Chris Hemsworth, he's just more muscular and more tough looking. And the same can be said for the 1 Series. See, if the 135i was the only, sporty coupe 1 Series, it would be the best looking. But the thing is, the 1M coupe exists and it looks just, more muscular and tougher. So it nearly looks good. Just make sure if you own one of these, just don't park it next to a 1M coupe. Now, unlike Chris Hemsworth, many people aren't convinced with the overall looks of the 1 Series. And that's because these were designed by a far more unpopular Mr. Chris Bangle. This was the Chris Bangle era of BMWs. So what do you guys think? Like, I don't mind these, but yeah, let us know in the comments. Do you like the look of the 1 Series or not? Let us know. Now, unfortunately, there are quite a few common issues and problems with the exterior of the 1 Series, and we're going to be getting to those in a little bit in the video. So how's the interior? Well, look, from a design point of view, it's still really nice. It's aging a little bit, but it's really, really nice. There's a little bit of a discrepancy in some of the textures used, if I'm going to be really picky. Like, there's this kind of wood finish here, yet there's carbon fiber on the steering wheel. I feel like this might be like a optional extra, maybe an aftermarket optional extra. But design-wise, look, overall, very nice. Actually, you know what? I love the simplicity of the interior, like just obvious buttons, everything still feels really nice to work, all the buttons feel really good. It's just nice having a car that has some bells and whistles, but it's not screaming bells and whistles at you. Very good. The actual driving position is spot on. Fantastic. Good amount of adjustability both in the steering wheel and in the seat. And the ergonomics of everything's really easy to touch. Really good. Now, wear and tear on this car, this is this gentleman's daily driver. And the wear and tear is fantastic. Like the leather on the seats hasn't gone too bad. The squidge is really nice. Like everything feels really, really solid. There's a bit of wear and tear on the leather on the steering wheel. That's to be expected. But for this car, excellent wear and tear. However, there are loads of reports that lower spec 1 Series interiors after this many years and this many kilometers get very, very shabby. Like door handles creaking, sometimes cracking off, some of this interior trim feeling a bit dodgy. Like little bit of a squeak on this one, like tiny really. But yeah, the lower spec ones, just be cautious, things could fall apart. Even though some of the plastics like down here are hard plastics, they're not hard, they're almost soft hard. Like this doesn't move and they actually feel quite nice. Even on the armrest, like there's almost no wear and tear on the leather, like it still has that texture to it. Great wear and tear. Okay, now in the back seat, I'm 0.3958, staying tall. This is in my driving position and I have basically no room whatsoever. My legs are squished, my feet are squished, my head feels squished, lots of squishing going on back here. It's important to note that basically the rear seat room of the coupe is pretty much the same as the hatchback. So if you're buying the hatchback as a practical hatchback, just be aware that for adults, my height, there's not a lot of space back here. Now wear and tear wise, like the front back here, fantastic. Like the gentleman that owns this has 2 kids, they're back here a fair bit. And you'd never know, there's basically no wear and tear, it feels almost new. It even has, I don't know how BMW do this, but there's a BMW smell. Yeah, it's like, it's quite a nice smell, but this exudes it. Now, like the exterior, the interior of these can suffer from a few gremlins and common problems and issues. And again, we'll get to those in a second. So how's the tech? Well, look, it's going to depend on year, spec, model variant, and what options have been ticked. So on some of them, the tech is pretty crap, and on other ones, it's slightly less crap. There's no touchscreen, but you do have Bluetooth, although it can be an absolute nightmare to connect. USB input, optional satellite navigation. Although even when the sat-nav was brand new, it was terrible, so these days it's just utter rubbish. Front and rear park assist, cruise control, auto climate control, auto wipers, and auto headlight dimming. There are quite a few reports of this screen glitching out and being pretty much near impossible to read, especially during daytime. And there was an update to the iDrive systems in 2012, but again, don't expect any kind of modern levels of connectivity or even user experience. So, is it practical? Well, you know what, like for a two-door sports coupe, it's actually not too bad back here. Although the hatchback versions of these, the boots aren't quite as spacious as some of the competition. Although you can flip the seats down flat with these little levers. How good's that? And practicality in the back seat, you've got some nets on the backs of the seats here. You've got a spot for your deck of cards, and there's a spot just here for your Bible or your Quran, or maybe Richard Dawkins' God Delusion. And practicality up front, you've got some pretty good sized door bins, not quite big enough to get a big water bottle in, but you can get stuff in there. There's a cool little cubby hole in here. There's a storage spot on top of the dashboard, although there are lots of reports of this thing breaking and falling apart. There is an ashtray, I think, and a cigarette lighter there. Disgusting. Although the little trapdoor that hides it feels almost luxurious to use. 2 cup holders here, but the second cup holder is in the most stupid position because it's under the armrest, so you need to have like a T-Rex arm to kind of even get to it. Under here, you've got a phone holster, which will be good if you're over 65 and feel the need to have your phone in a holster rather than just your pocket. There's a spot for half a banana here. There's some spots for stuff and things up here. And there's a glove box, although once you've got the owner's manual and all your documents in there, there's not really any room left in the glove box. So what goes wrong with the BMW 1 Series? Well, there really are only 200 or 300 things that you do need to be aware of. So let's start with the exterior. There are many reports of the fuel filler caps just coming off. The windows have a habit of sticking shut. The electronics in the mirrors are known to fail. As these get older, the door handles are known to actually stick and fail, but the problem is you don't only need a new door handle, you need a new catch as well. But the real problem is finding one in exactly the same color as your car could be a challenge, and being a BMW could be expensive. Now, if your 1 Series has parking distance control and it gets wet, which it can do, it can play havoc with the electronics so badly so that it can take out all of the instruments in the dash. The problem is it might need an entire new module, and again, being BMW, could be very expensive. Now, on the hatchback versions of these, the water jets that are on the rear windscreen wiper can clog up and fail. But the problem is the water leaks into the actual mechanism of the wiper and it freaks the wiper out, but then it overflows into the boot, like into the tailgate, and that can cause corrosion. Now, at around about 150,000 kilometers, you might need to budget in for new engine mounts, new suspension bushings, and new dampers. All BMW 1 Series are known to be much harder on their brakes than most family hatchbacks or even coupes, so yeah, you might be shopping for pads and rotors more often than you think. And also some of the wheels are pretty bend prone. And finally on the exterior, and look, this isn't a BMW 1 Series specific thing, like any performance car or driver focused car, make sure you check it thoroughly for any accident damage or dodgy repair work. Now before all the BMW fanboys start typing away going, oh mine has had no problems at all, you guys are idiots, don't know what you're talking about. Obviously, yeah, even this thing's perfect. This has had no dramas whatsoever. But it's really important to know that the BMW you're looking at, or maybe that you own, might have none, some, or all of these problems. It's just so important to thoroughly check everything before you buy one. Now, problems and common issues inside. There are loads of reports of wetness in the rear, which sounds both naughty and disgusting all at the same time. The problem is it's moisture that comes up through the seatbelt bolts, or it might be the fact that someone at BMW has fitted a part in the back incorrectly, you dickhead. Warning lights for the ESC and the airbags are popping up are pretty common. The thing is, the airbag and seatbelt light, it might actually just be one of the plugs under the seat coming adrift. Now, if you have a Bluetooth equipped 1 Series, whatever you do, don't leave the car unlocked, because what will happen, the Bluetooth will actively search for linked mobile phones while you're away from it, and that can flatten the battery. Also, if the clock or the mileage indicator reset without your permission, that might be a sign of a failing AGM battery. Now, before we get into all of the mechanical issues with these things, if you're enjoying this video, can you do us a favor and hit those like, subscribe, and bell icon buttons? That'd do us a massive favor. And after the video, go and check us out on the socials. Now, even though the N54 engine in this received the coveted Engine of the Year award in 2007, what actually goes wrong with the 1 Series mechanically? Well, look, I'm not a mechanic. I'm not qualified to answer such questions, but Jim is.
I love these 6-cylinder engines. I love the way they sound, and they make pretty good power too, but they do have their fair share of problems. And for the purists out there, this isn't an exhaustive list of everything that goes wrong. This is just a few of the more common problems we see in the workshop on a daily basis on unmodified engines. Righto, some of the more common, frequently seen problems we see in the workshop, we see oil leaks from valve cover gaskets and the oil filter housing. We see a lot of water pump and thermostat failures, really common problem. And we also see the occasional ignition misfire. Other than that, they're the more serious problems. The less serious problems we see, expansion cooling tanks, splitting, and all the other heat-cycled, feeble engine bay plastics tend to be a problem, inlet pipes and things like that. Because of emissions and efficiency, they are direct injection. Now, the problem with that is they tend to clog up their inlet manifolds, and when they're clogged up, they run poorly, and they're actually very much less efficient. This can be fixed. You can do like a walnut medium blast in there, and that cleans it all out, but it ain't cheap. If you are looking at one, or if you already have one, we recommend you forget about the ridiculously long 20-odd thousand K service intervals. If you want it to last, service it every 10,000 Ks. For the graphic details of all the other little bits and pieces that go wrong, check out the cheat sheets. Now, the far less common 4-cylinder petrol and diesel versions that we see, they have a similar type of problem list. They've got the oil leaks and cooling system faults. There's a lot of little problems, and there's way too many to list here, so if you want to check them out, go and check out the cheat sheets.
Is it safe? Well, like sort of, but look, here's a rapid voiceover from me telling you what this car has. Depending on year, spec and option fitted, the 1 Series will have 6 airbags, electronic stability control, traction control, anti-lock brakes, and a 5-star ANCAP safety rating. However, that 5-star ANCAP safety rating was awarded way back in 2004, and I'm pretty sure even base jumping had a 4-star ANCAP safety rating back then, so it's kind of safe. But if you turn the traction and stability control off and go ploughing into a corner far too enthusiastically, it becomes very unsafe very quickly. So, what's it like to drive? Well, this is where all of those concerns about mechanical reliability just go flying out the window, because this thing is a joy to drive. Like seriously, this is about all of the performance anyone ever needs. Because this thing is so small, it just feels so nimble and alive and energetic all the time. Like, this is obviously a quick car, but because it is so small, it actually feels like you're going faster than you actually are. So it heightens that driving engagement feeling. Like, even around town, it's so easy to drive, it's easy to park, it's just a joy. On the freeway, it cruises along really nicely, but then you get it out on like these country roads with a few nice corners and like, so much torque. I love it. Now, this car has the 7-speed dual clutch gearbox, which I know all the purists will freak out about because it's not a manual. And I kind of get it. Like, number one, the shift feel, I know it's not a shift because they're paddles, but the paddles feel like a old school Logitech PlayStation steering wheel. There's no nuance to the actual paddle shift. And even when you're not in manual mode around town, it can be a little bit slow on the uptake. So if you're pulling out of a driveway, sometimes it can get kind of lost between gears. I don't know if that's an impact of the many years and thousands of kilometers, if it's actually getting worse than when it was new. I just find the DCT a bit disappointing. Although to hopefully bridge the gap between the dual clutch and the manual, you just hit sport mode here, drop a couple of paddles. Yeah. They're fast shifts, I want that. Now, the suspension. After this many years and this many thousands and thousands of kilometers, it's degraded a little bit. Like, it's overly busy, any big impacts are pretty bloody obvious. On a smooth road, fantastic. But on these crappy Australian roads with corners and stuff, it jiggles about. And once you sort of start getting up it, you lose a bit of confidence in the overall balance of the car. Like, you're not really sure what's going to happen. The suspension, I hate to say it, it's a little bit disappointing. It might also be because this is on the run flat tyres that these cars come with, so that could be part of it as well. Now, as far as sounds goes, this car has an aftermarket Remus exhaust fitted, and it sounds great. Sounds awesome. But on the flip side, there are quite a few rattles and squeaks from not only the interior, but even from the suspension. If you get a few undulations going on, yeah, the suspension, I don't know what they are, but there's some slightly interesting sounds coming from down there. Now look, overall, the 135i, fantastic to drive. You know, even the bad points aren't really all that bad. It's just engaging. I love this thing. The drum rears, the lowest spec 1 Series, the 4-cylinder ones, and especially the diesels, even though it's front-engined and rear-wheel drive, they're just a bit underwhelming. Like, I feel like they're sold to us as being like almost a sports car, but they're just not sports cars. You're better off with something like a Suzuki Swift Sport, which will probably be cheaper, more reliable, and I'm telling you right now, a Suzuki Swift Sport is way more fun than a diesel one of these. Now also, a few months ago we reviewed a BMW M3. The link for that video is just up there. And I asked you guys the question, do you think that car is too fast for Australian roads? Because I'll be honest, I think it is too fast for Australian roads. But that's where this car shines. This is, again, I know I said at the start of the driving impressions, but this is the perfect amount of performance. It's fast enough to make you go, okay, we're moving now. But it's still slow enough to be able to stick your right foot in and actually give it the beans all the time without having to call your lawyer. Pricing here in Australia kicks off from as little as $3,000 for like an early model base spec with more than 200,000 kilometers on it, probably in horrifically bad condition, and it tops out at around about $40,000 for a mint condition 135i. Something like this, a 2011 135i with just over 150,000 Ks on it in really good condition, around about 30 grand. But if you're after the sublime 1M Coupe, which you should be because you're human, you're going to be looking at anywhere from $70,000 to $100,000. Or if you're watching this and you own one of those and you're interested in selling it to me, would you take one of my internal organs as payment? Oh, and for pricing internationally, here's a graphic. BMW claim a fuel consumption figure of anywhere between 4.5 to 9.6 litres per 100 Ks, depending on model, variant, spec, all that sort of stuff. This particular car is claimed at 9.6, but on this test we're seeing a figure of 9.9, so it's pretty good. BMW offered a pretty underwhelming 3-year unlimited kilometre warranty on all 1 Series, and obviously these are all well and truly out of date now, and that's pretty scary because the cost of parts and labour can add up pretty bloody quickly. Also, as we've been researching this video, we found that these 1 Series have fantastic owners groups and an amazing fan base. So if you're buying one of these, make sure you reach out to those owners clubs because the advice that these guys can give and the support they can give is phenomenal. Okay, so should you buy one? Well, it kind of depends on your intentions and your needs. If you are on a really tight budget and you want a 1 Series because for less than $10,000 or $15,000 you can have a BMW, no, you should not buy one of these. The potential mechanical issues might be extensive, especially on cheaper and lower spec 4-cylinder 1 Series, and the cost to repair these issues can verge on the ridiculous. And for $10,000 or $15,000, there are just so many more financially intelligent alternatives, like say a Mazda 3. Look, okay, it hasn't got the European image, but they still look great. They're arguably more fun to drive than the lower spec 1 Series, and when you're on a budget, they're just a smarter decision. But what about when it comes to these, or the 6-cylinder versions of the 1 Series? Well, that's a whole different story. As long as you are aware that even the 6-cylinder variants aren't without their gremlins, and if you're genuinely financially, mentally, and emotionally prepared for what may be some very expensive repair bills, the 6-cylinder 1 Series, especially the 135i, offers a hell of a driving experience. Even with the current inflated prices in the used car market, the fact that for 20 to 30 grand, you can get a 300 horsepower, rear-wheel drive, perfectly sized and beautifully balanced performance car is just fantastic. Plus, with a few intelligent modifications, these things can be genuine giant killers. If you are in the market, try to find the lowest mileage, most fastidiously cared for example, and it's absolutely critical that it has a full and thorough service history, and make sure you have it inspected by a mechanic before you hand over your cash. Guys, look, there's no doubt that when these are at their best, they are a phenomenal piece of equipment. But just prepare for the worst, so hopefully you're pleasantly surprised. Guys, thank you so much for watching, and look, as always, what did you think of the 1 Series? Let us know in the comments below. And oh, can you remember to hit those like, subscribe, and bell icon buttons, and after the video, go and check us out on the socials. See you next time. But now that the BMW 135, here we go. Now before we the BMW 135i and come on, here we go. Here we go. To all the BMW 1 Series owners groups, BMW mechanics, I've got to make a massive shout out to all of the BMW, slow down, I just got to slow down. Here we go. 100 things that go wrong with these that you really need to, this particular model has that clumption, 9.6, good. 3-year unlimited kilometre warranty on all 1 Series, and obviously these are all well. BMW offered a 3-year unlimited kilometre warranty, underwhelming. BMW offered, sorry, here we go. Also, as we've been researching this car, fucking come on mate, what are you doing? Thoroughly checked out by a serviced and licensed mechanic. Serviced? That made no sense. All right, here we go.